Ampire. Hey babies, hey babies, hey babies, hey babies, hey babies. Hi everyone, hi everyone, hi everyone, hi everyone. Happy Monday, everybody. And a really happy Monday from Ashburn. We're going to get what we want. You're going to get to see Jayden Daniels play this weekend against the New York Jets in preseason game number 1. So number 1 overall pick went to the Hall of Fame game, albeit Bears have an extra preseason game because they played the first one against the Texans. Caleb Williams did not play in it. Not sure what Drake May's situation is going to be. We'll find out for the third preseason game for sure when the Commanders play the Patriots in Landover. But this weekend, MetLife Stadium, preseason game number 1, and we are going to see Jayden Daniels play. Now, how much is he going to play, and is he going to start? Well, that wasn't really clarified yesterday. So Dan Quinn came out, was asked about the preseason game. We in the media tent learned that Jayden Daniels was going to come up to the podium and was going to speak to everybody. And so we all started working on this assumption that he is the starter after Dan Quinn stated he is going to play. And because he was going to speak to the media, obviously he was going to get asked the question, are you going to start and are you going to play? And there needed to be some clarity on that. Dan Quinn never actually said he was starting the game. And I got to tell you, I was surprised. Nobody in the assembled media, and I guess that's me included, and if you're listening to the press conferences you hear, I am asking some questions here and there, but I typically don't ask a lot of them. I kind of leave that for the reporters to have their time to ask their questions because I can get answers to what I need to through the team. But no one followed up and asked, is he starting? And while we were on the sideline watching practice, there was like kind of this assumption that he was. Well, if they're playing him, they're going to throw him out there and start. And I'm going to play Jayden Daniels' press conference in a second here because I actually thought he had a lot to say. He's not very verbose and he doesn't give a lot of like really long, detailed answers. But when he does speak, you can get a lot out of what he's saying. And the funniest moment, and you'll hear it in a moment, was he was asked, it's going to be your first start. And he literally, because you can't see this, looks back at the PR staff and is like, did they say that? Because I heard I'm playing. So we're not sure where that's going yet. My assumption is he would start, but the way he reacted to that led me to believe it's possible that he won't. Obviously, we're going to get some clarity probably tomorrow because the team had the day off on Monday. And as of Tuesday, Dan Quinn's going to hold another press conference in the morning before the last practice before they travel to New York on Wednesday for the joint practice against the Jets. And I'm sure he's going to be asked, is he starting or is he not starting? And we'll see if they actually answer that question. All right, I want to play for you the press conference that Jayden held. And so you get to hear from him, and maybe I'll stop and start along the way and give you some of my thoughts on some of the things that he said so as to not have you listen to the full thing and then react to it. So take a listen here to Jayden Daniels as he was speaking to the media on Sunday after it was announced that he is indeed going to play in the first preseason game.
Jayden, start off with, Dan said you're going to play in the preseason game against the Jets. I don't know if there was ever really any doubt, but how much are you looking forward to doing that, and how important is that for you?
I just love playing football, so I'm happy about it. I always knew I was going to play. I don't know when I'm going to play. At least I have the opportunity to go out there and play, so I'm excited for it.
And then also, looking different topic, but Terry McLaurin's been with a lot of different starting quarterbacks. I don't know how much you've heard that. How much of you feel like can you see a growth with him already? And when you look down the road, where can it get to, and how important is it to develop that with another guy like that?
Terry's an exceptional player. Obviously, he made a name for himself in this league, so be able to build a rapport with him, the other receivers, the whole offense as a whole, and have us as a tight-knit group so we could go out there and we could go compete, have fun, and everybody could be on the same page.
As much work as you're putting in, the chance to go against the green and white this week, I know it doesn't change anything, but how excited is that for you to go ahead and go against some strangers?
Like I said, it's football. I'm very excited. I love the game of sport. I love the game of football. I love playing it. I'm very passionate. I love to compete. So going out there would be a different challenge for not just me but the whole team, going against somebody you're not familiar with. Just see where the cards fall. Know that we can go out there and, we can make mistakes. We try to execute at a high level, but, that's kind of what this time is for, just to go out there and see what we can do, trial and error, and move forward.
Talk about that moment with the Jets here. I've talked about this previously, but I believe the joint practices are going to be far more illuminating than the games, albeit with this one exception, with Daniels getting what will be first 11 on 11 full speed snaps. And it'll be interesting to see, does he do it with the starters? Does he not do it with the starters? And I'll weigh in on that in a minute. But I've been talking about this in a lot of places about the Jets being, I know it wasn't planned this way, the perfect joint practice team for this one in regard to specific spaces that I really want to see get tested in whatever workouts they do, whether there is 11 on 11, but certainly one-on-ones and certainly some 7-on-7 type stuff. Don't you want to see this offensive line that's been doing musical chairs and juggling things around up against one of the best defensive fronts in football? I do. And I think it's going to be a marker, and I think it's going to be very telling about where this group actually is. And it's also going to be very telling who gets put out there in these one-on-ones against which other players. I think it'll be telling about how Cliff Kingsbury, Dan Quinn, et cetera, Bobby Johnson, the offensive line coach, how they're feeling about everybody there. Secondarily, and on the other side of the ball, Aaron Rodgers is not going to play in the preseason game that's already been announced. Garrett Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Mike Williams, all the weapons that the Jets have, and of course, Hall of Fame quarterback there. We're going to find out about the corners. Where is Emmanuel Forbes? Where is Mike Davis? Where is Benjamin St-Juste? And again, it's only going to be a snippet, but that group hasn't been as fluid as I thought it was going to be throughout camp. I thought there'd be a lot more kind of Wild West competition. The vast majority of the one reps have been taken by Forbes and St-Juste, and Davis has kind of worked his way into that, but it feels like it's a three-man race for two outside corner slots, and Mike Sanderson's kind of a day one step-in slot corner. Noah Igbenogany appears, at least if you watch practice enough, to be the primary backup potential starter, whatever, on the inside, but maybe not on the outside. So the race to win those jobs it feels like it's not as on as it has been, at least on the other side of the ball with the offensive line. However, this is the weekend we get Rodgers, Williams, all these weapons, first ballot Hall of Fame quarterback. And even if it's just in one-on-ones or 7-on-7s or all of these different, not exactly full speed football metrics, I think we're going to get a really good look at that. So as far as like where we are, God, I'm going to have a much better feel by Saturday evening after the preseason game. But I think I'm going to start making some conclusions about where they are in this process after Thursday. All right, let's get back to Jayden Daniels.
Anything that has surprise is not the right word, but that you thought, oh, okay, this is a little different than what I've been doing as far as, college to pro?
Yeah, I mean, just the little things of the details. And DQ he harps very much on the game situation, game management, stuff like that. So learning the different rules of the NFL from college, because obviously it's different, and just trying to expand my knowledge as far as just playing the position, not just, what is in our system, but playing the position, knowing like in a 4-minute situation we got to do this, or 2 minutes, stuff like that.
As you go into this joint practice and then also the preseason game, do you set kind of goals for yourself, or are there things that you're looking to find out about kind of yourself and the offense as a whole as you go against a different team for the first time?
Nah, I mean, how sharp can we be? How fast can we execute our offense? Limit the pre-snap penalties and post-snap penalties, and just go out there and try to execute at a high level. I mean, it's my first one ever, so I don't know what I'm getting myself into, so it'll be a surprise for me, but just go out there and have fun.
Just to have the chance to go against the Jets secondary, what do you hope to get out of that?
Go out there and see where I'm at, challenge myself, challenge their defense. Obviously, they got a very good secondary, very good defense. See where we stand.
How will you balance showcasing your explosiveness versus sliding to protect yourself more, especially early on?
I mean, just know when you can take your chances and when you can't. Love to see another play. It's a long season, so try to err on, protecting yourself, and if the chances are there, go ahead and take it.
Is that something that you talk about with the coaches at all, or is that something you just have to know on the field?
Me, I'm very competitive, so I might try to take a chance here and there. But they try to say get down. So it's time to find that battle.
All right, I want to stop there for a moment because I think we're all kind of thinking about RG3 just a little bit here, and in his rookie season where he did unbelievably exciting things with his legs and then ended up having a season where he suffered injuries that derailed his career as a rookie by taking too many chances, by taking too many hits, by not going out of bounds more often. And this is really the first time since then that I think this team has had a quarterback with a skill set like this, and therefore why I think some of this is coming up. Secondarily, there's a lot of hope placed on him. And I talked about this like leading up to the draft. And if you do watch his film from last year, you will see some cartoonish hits that he took. The speed of the players is faster here. Will he learn on the fly? Yes. But I will say this, the more I think about this, the idea that you need to get into your head, you have to protect yourself literally at all costs, I think is a losing mentality. And I don't think it's one that works for a competitor or works for somebody who is in the position that he's in. It is baked in that he's going to have to put his body on the line sometimes. I think what we're talking about here is, can he do it in a way that is safer and not taking chances? I love watching Lamar Jackson run the ball. Very rarely takes a hit. It's almost like second nature to him to know when to get out of bounds, when to get down, when the play's over, and when to go. And I think that's a special trait. Others don't have that. They take what is unnecessary hits. Or in the case of someone like Josh Allen, who can really run and can really move, seems to want this contact. It almost feels unnecessary. It nearly derailed a season of his, a year ago when he hurt his elbow by taking so much contact. So there's a happy medium here. But I don't believe there is a way for Jayden Daniels to go into a season and have this assumption that he doesn't have to put his body on the line, that he doesn't have to play instinctually, and he's just going to have to play to the way he got here, and he's going to learn on the job. So for me, the whole protect yourself, I agree, is a big deal, especially with someone who's likely to run the ball a decent amount, and we'll see starting on Saturday. But I don't think he can sit there and go, on this play, I'm going to start running, and the second I see this, I'm going to do this. You stop playing instinctually. And I hopefully, and I don't think he's going to do that. Hopefully he won't. All right, back to Jayden.
You guys have been out here a couple weeks now, day after day after day. How do you feel like your game has grown?
Yeah, I feel like just getting more comfortable in the system as a whole unit. Going against the defense that we have, the players that we have. Obviously, you have veteran leadership and Bobby and, Frankie and Deron Payne, J.A., those type of guys. So it's iron sharpening iron at this point.
And then specifically with the offense, you guys are really starting to work on the run installs and stuff. How do you view this offense starting to click, and where can it go?
Yeah, I mean, the run is going to be very important. We got to be able to establish a run and show that with the more physical team of the line of scrimmage. And that's where the game is won and lost in the trenches.
At the beginning of camp, when we talked to Coach about the progression for you to eventually take over as the starting quarterback of the team, he said, we're going to know when he's ready, and he's going to know when he's ready. At this point in the process, where are you on the idea of you knowing you're ready to take off?
I still got some way to go. Just little stuff. Go out there and still competing. Obviously, what Coach DQ and them said, but at the end of the day, it's their decision. I trust them fully with their plan and stuff like that. It bring me along, so that's up to them at this point. But for me, I just go out there and how can I better myself each and every day and just go out there and compete hard.
I do assume, though, you feel like you're making progress. Is there any ways you can share?
I feel like the whole unit as a whole, from the ones, the twos, to the threes, whoever's in there is making progress and getting comfortable in Cliff's system.
Jayden, you mentioned some of the veterans on this team, your Bobby Wagners, your John Allen, Terry McLaurin. How have those veterans embraced you, and how have they kind of helped you establish your own role as a leader on the team?
Yeah, I mean, they treat everybody the same. Whether it's me, Mikey Sarenstill, Sam Hartman, everybody gets treated the same. So it's not, I got drafted higher than everybody else. We got to put more on this plate. Like, no, we're all treated equally. So, and everybody just allows each other to be themselves. At the end of the day, it's not that you got to come in and act like you're somebody you're not. You can go in and be yourself, and it's an open communication, open locker room. We love to have fun.
Jayden, starting for your first preseason game, huge moment. I want to ask, do you have any friends and family going to the game? And if so, just kind of like, how is that going to look for you?
Starting. For real? Starting? I know I'm playing. I don't know if starting or not, but my family gonna be there regardless. It's my first game. As far as, in the NFL, my first snap. So my family's gonna be there, and they're gonna be at everything.
You can't see it, but it was an incredible moment. Jayden just kind of, initially when he hears the word start, he kind of tilts his head a little bit, looks back at one of the members of the PR staff, then lets the question end, and he goes, wait a minute, and it was smart. He's going, I don't know what I'm doing. And Charlie, who you heard in the background, yelled, that's not what I heard. It's left it open for debate. Is he starting? Is he not? Let me give you my opinion on that coming into this. And I think Dan Quinn obviously is going to be asked about it and will address it. And we'll see what happens, whether he says he's going to on Tuesday, because they're not in practice today. And Dan Quinn will have a press conference tomorrow morning. I believe he should. And I believe he should for one reason and one reason alone. This offensive line has been shuffling players around and moving a number of different players around. And I would like to, back to the point of protecting him, protecting himself, etc. I don't know how many of the starters for the Jets are going to play. Clearly on offense, Aaron Rodgers is not. This is a team that has different levels of, whether it's founded or not, aspirations, because they have a Hall of Fame quarterback and they got a top 5 defense. And so I'm guessing, not having at this point in the week, they haven't said anything, and I'm waiting to hear what Robert Saleh is going to say about what their plans are. But I'm guessing they're not going to play their starters very much. And specifically, especially on defense, is Quinnen Williams really going to play? Or if he does, how much of it is he really going to play? But the point back to Jayden is this. I agree that he needs to get some reps. I agree that he should play in the preseason game. I certainly hope, it's a risk worth taking as he doesn't get hurt. It's clearly, that's the last thing anybody's going to want to happen. But I believe that he should go because he hasn't had any reps. I think it's time for him to do it. Up to this point in practice, this team hasn't hit very much. They have played it very, very close to the vest with that. This has not been what I would describe, at least from what I've seen, really high-level football speed practice. That's been a mild surprise to me through to this point of camp, that the first time we're going to see kind of full go will either be at a joint practice or will be at a game. And that's a different, I guess, tack to take going in, and one that's unusual to me. And I'd love to actually talk to Dan Quinn about it. And in fact, I asked him a question the other day when it was getting clear that the team was kind of showing these signs of they're ready to hit, they're ready to go. And his answer was they aren't. He wants them to be more coordinated, more in line with one another, more ready, to take the lid off. And I was surprised a little bit by that answer, mainly because he's talked so openly about the intensity you're going to see, the intensity you're going to feel. Your friends and family are going to like the way we play. We're going to bring it. That's like the quote. We're going to bring it. And up to this point in practice, they have not brought it. But it's by design, and it is, I think, partially just to protect everybody and get through the season. And it's early August, and there's no reason to go to a point where you end up putting anybody at risk or have injuries that are unnecessary. And I totally understand that. But there's this part of me that goes, if you're building this identity and this kind of intense way of playing fast, playing hard, playing physically, at what point do you start practicing those techniques and put them on the line? And there's no way around it when you get to the preseason game to show that. But I'd love to talk to Dan Quinn about it, to hear his thought process of bringing that type of intensity. Anyway, back to Jayden Daniels. I do think he needs experience. I believe in experience, even if it's only for a drive or two, even if it's just for a quarter. And I want him to start because I want to go back to this idea of the offensive line that has been moving all of these people around with just a couple of different exceptions. Sam Cosmi is the right guard. Tyler Biadasz is the center. Everything else seems to have been moved around. Nick Allegretti is probably the left guard, but left tackle and right tackle have been very much in doubt about who is going to end up being the starters and the main protectors of Jayden Daniels through this process. I want him with whoever they think the best 5 are right now, because I do want it to go back to, one, if these are the people that are likely to win these jobs and earn these jobs, they're going to earn it with him on the field. Everybody knows what he means to the franchise. So if you want Brandon Coleman to go out there day one and look to steal the starting left tackle job and be it from day one, then put him out there immediately. If you think that he needs a little more time and seasoning, you've given him the reps in practice, but you feel better with Cornelius Lucas, then put Cornelius Lucas out there, but just protect Daniels. Give him the best shot to be as successful as possible. So I would prefer to see Daniels with the starting offensive line or the current best five or the current combination that they think are going to be there on opening day over the other option, which is put him out there with the backups against the Jets backups with a different offensive line backups. It's been juggled around throughout the week. I would prefer that Daniels goes out there, even if they're not ready to say he's the starter, they're not ready to hand him the keys yet. I think we all know where it's going. Even Dan Quinn reiterated, there's no secret going on here. He reiterated all of that. But even if he's not ready to be handed the job, I still think putting him out there with the starting offensive line doesn't signal anything they can't walk back or talk themselves out of if they don't feel comfortable saying it. It's more out of, this is the direction we're trying to go, and he's not going to win or lose this year, but these are the people that we felt were best inclined to work with him on day one in game one. And that's the direction I would go. All right, let's take a quick break. Coming up, I caught up with the legend Brian Mitchell because over the weekend, Devin Hester, who got inducted into the Hall of Fame, called his name out while giving his acceptance speech, saying that Mitchell belongs in the Hall of Fame, which is obviously a long-standing thing that this fan base has wanted to happen for him. So I caught up with B. Mitch on the sideline at practice and asked him about it, and you'll hear it next. Bram Watch the Show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. So over the weekend, the Hall of Fame inducted its new class. Devin Hester was part of it. That was history. A couple history-making moments. Andre Johnson became the first ever primary Houston Texan to get into the Hall of Fame. J.J. Watt obviously is not going to be that far behind on him, but he is the first to go in from that franchise. And Devin Hester went in, and Devin Hester primarily did try to play offense for a while, but it never really clicked for him. But primarily is of this generation the best kick and punt returner of this generation. And it is notable, obviously, that he went in because he really is the first player to head into Canton and to get a bust and to be enshrined as primarily a special team returner. And Brian Mitchell, for years and years and years, has been one of the primary, I would say, 4 or 5 Redskins Washington football team commanders that I believe should belong in the Hall of Fame. Mitchell, obviously, which I'll get to primarily in a moment because of Hester, Joe Jacoby, which we can talk about. My partner in the booth, London Fletcher, I believe, should be in the Hall of Fame. I think Gary Clark should be in the Hall of Fame. I think he was as important, or equally as important as Art Monk was during the Super Bowl years in the 1980s. But I think the ship has kind of sailed on him to make a case to get into Canton. But in my opinion, he belongs there. And the running back Larry Brown, back from the early 1970s, one of the better running backs in the NFL during that time period. He also not in the Hall of Fame, and also likely ship has probably sailed on him. But those other prominent 3, I think there's still a case to be made for Jake, B. Mitch, and of course, London Fletcher. But let's focus in on B. Mitch here a little bit, because over the weekend, Devin Hester did accept the honor. And then during his speech, he said this.
I hope me being here today opens up the doors and brings some attention to other guys like Brian Mitchell and Josh Cribbs, because I'm not the only returner who deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. I'm just the first. And I'm the first partly because of the love and support of my family and friends.
So Devin Hester name checks and shouts out B. Mitch and says he's one of them that should be there. I'm in my early 50s. So I think back through the history of this team. And prior to Brian Mitchell, Mike Nelms was an unbelievably great electric punt returner, kick returner for the Washington Redskins under the Joe Gibbs teams early in the 80s. I don't think he's Hall of Fame caliber, but there's a history here that led into Brian Mitchell. One of the biggest highlight reel type players was Billy White Shoes Johnson, who played primarily for the Houston Oilers and had these crazy dances in the end zone that, these days, like up against the gritty or some of the other things that occur in the end zone, wouldn't have been that big of a deal. But back then, his celebrations were very memorable, and he also was an electric returner. He's probably someone that probably should be considered. If Devin Hester is in, he should probably be considered as well. So I really, though, to make the point for Brian Mitchell, I think you need to look at the statistics and do a real true comparison of, where are they and how do they stand up against one another. And so I have both stats up. And here's Devin Hester, who played the majority of his career with the Bears and his last couple with Atlanta. And the vast majority of his touchdowns and return yards obviously came with the Bears. But here are the numbers. In his career, he played in 156 games. He had 315 punt returns for 3,695 yards and an amazing number, 14 touchdowns. 13 came with the Bears, 1 came with the Falcons in the 2 years that he was there. He did also play with Baltimore, and he was in a Seattle uniform, but he did not play for them. He did play 12 games with Baltimore, did not have a return for a touchdown. In the kick return category, he had 295 opportunities, 7,333 yards, 5 kick returns for touchdowns. So the yards per return average for punts in his career, 11.7. The yards per return average in kicks was 24.9, and a grand total of 19 total touchdowns over the course of his career. Here's Brian Mitchell, who played 14 years, 10 of which were here in Washington, 3 in Philadelphia, 1 in New York. He did have 2 punt return touchdowns and 2 kick return touchdowns for the Eagles. He was motivated those years after he played in Washington. But here are his numbers. He had 463 punt return opportunities, 1 yard short of 5,000 for his career, 9 touchdowns, and in kick returns, he had 607 opportunities, 14,014 yards, 4 kickoff returns for touchdowns, for a grand total of 23,330 yards in the return game. Devin Hester ended up with 14,455. He played 12 years in the NFL, one of which was Seattle, where he didn't really get many opportunities. And Brian Mitchell played 14. So again, 23,000 return yards to Devin Hester's 14,000 return yards, albeit he played a couple more seasons than him. That is an astronomical difference. And so for all of us who have watched this, and I come from a place where I want our legends to be honored in the way that they deserve to be honored, and Brian Mitchell is one of them. Now that Devin Hester is in, it is my opinion that those who control who goes into the Hall of Fame have absolutely no choice but to not ignore the accomplishments of the guy who is inarguably the greatest returner of all time, for a long period of time held the record for the most yards gained in NFL history. I don't know how you ignore Brian Mitchell here. So while I was at practice over the weekend, I ran into B. Mitch, and he graciously gave me some time because I wanted to talk to him about the Hall of Fame now, how he's felt about his candidacy to this point, and of course, Devin Hester bringing his name up during his induction speech. All right, here with Brian Mitchell. So I'm watching the Hall of Fame induction over the weekend, and Devin Hester goes in first true returner to go into the Hall of Fame. Obviously, all of us around here are thinking about you. And then he name checks you and says, I'm the first, but essentially I shouldn't be the only one. What did you make of hearing that?
Well, it truly made me feel good. I've talked to Devin a few times, and I remember one year when he was playing against Washington, I had been offering my services for the players on this team, and nobody ever called me. He called me and asked me about something he had been dealing with, and he had a big return against us. Yeah. But, we all respected each other, and we talked to each other. And that was, I think it was great for him to do that.
Yeah. How have you thought about this? Has it been frustrating? How have you thought about this process where we finally have a returner in, but we all know, at least around here, it should have been you?
Yeah, I've been sometimes frustrated, but what I try to do is not think about it. And I've learned that if I'm thinking about something, then you already know I'm a fiery personality and I'm going to say what I want to say. But the ultimate thing is, when people will just walk up to me and say certain things, it made me feel good. I remember one time when Gail Sayers said Brian Mitchell could have played any time, at any era with us as well. When Gail Sayers said, I stopped really worrying about a lot of things. But now that Devin mentioned it again, I guess it's back in the forefront, and we'll see what happens.
Do you think there will be momentum off of this on your behalf?
I would hope so. You know, I think the ultimate thing is when you look at the special team aspect, Jan Stenerud, Ray Guy, Martin Anderson, you know, now Devin Hester. How about Steve Tasker? Steve Tasker was as good a coverage guy as anybody has ever seen. And if you're going to say the Pro Football Hall of Fame, you have to represent every position, you know. And I think Devin said it, and he's right. He's not the only one. He's first. And sometimes somebody got to break it. My daughter actually told me when he was elected, she said, this is going to be better for you, Dad. And I started to look at it like that because my daughter's been in sports all her life. She understands it.
Yeah, I think Matthew Slater falls in this category too from the Patriots for the years for being incredible. Jeremy Reeves has had an incredible career doing this here. You know, I'm old enough to obviously remember your career. I remember guys like Billy White Shoes Johnson and Mike Nelms, you know, a longtime Redskin who was a great returner. Who did you look up to when you were kind of coming up and doing it?
Well, to be honest with you, when I first got here, I never really looked at it because I was a quarterback all my career. And when I got here, Wayne Sevier told me about Mike, so I was studying Mike Nelms' film. And then, you know, Mel Gray. I began to follow Mel Gray a good bit.
You weren't a returner in college?
No, I was a quarterback.
They didn't have you do it?
I never returned kicks and punts ever in my life until I got to the NFL.
So when they told you here that they wanted you to do it, were you like, what?
Well, I was a guy who always said that the people that return kicks and punts had to be crazy looking in the sky if people come out and hit you. And then when I learned it was my opportunity to make the NFL, I fell in love with it. And then the first time I ever returned a kick, it was for a touchdown. So it kind of gave you motivation and excitement to do it.
It's really interesting because I think some guys, we watch this every year in practice, there's some guys that really, you could tell, they'd like to try it, but they want nothing to do with it. Like, you could tell.
Yeah, you know, the one thing I think that God gave me, I've never been afraid of contact. I've never been afraid of hitting people. I looked at Walter Payton. Now, that was the guy I looked up to. Walter wasn't the biggest guy, but he was the toughest SOB on that field. Yeah. And that's the way I played football ever since I was a little kid. Even when I got the quarterback, my coach would always say, man, why are you running over people? I say, well, why let them hit me? I'm going to hit them first.
But you're a perfect person to ask about this. What do you make of the new rules, the kickoff rules and all that? How do you see that playing out this year?
Well, I think it's going to be just like it's always been. The teams that really care about special teams, and we have Larry Izzo here. You know, Izzo understands special teams. He was with New England and all that. They're going to be good at it because Dave Tobe, another guy, John Harbaugh up there, they understand and they look for little things that'll give them an advantage. And I think right now when you're looking at the return game, it's more like a running play. Yeah. So the coaches that can understand, go back and look at the counter tray and things that Joe Gibbs used to run and implement some idea of that into the return game, you have a lot of success at it.
All right, last thing. You know, I think I speak for a lot of people, and I know I speak for myself, that we want our legends represented correctly. So is there anything we collectively can do on your behalf to get you where you belong, which is in Canton?
I mean, I guess talking about it, making it be out in the open, because it seems, if you really think about it, it seems like Washington has never been treated fairly. With our offensive line, it shouldn't be just one guy in the Hall of Fame.
Joe Jacoby should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, a long time ago, because he beat, excuse me for saying, but he beat a lot of Hall of Famers' ass every time he was on the football field, and I can't see why he's not in there. It just showed that lack of respect for the area. We'll see how it works, though.
Yeah, my partner London Fletcher, too, should be in the Hall of Fame.
Definitely. Yeah. Now, London did as much as Ray Lewis did. Why isn't he?
All right, we'll keep banging the drum on your behalf, B. Mitch. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you, Bram.
All right, so thanks to B. Mitch for giving me a little, and I like how he put it at the end there. All we can really do is push for our people to be in the Hall of Fame. Like, every team has their guys that they believe have been overlooked. In our case, though, and I think in the case of Brian Mitchell, I think it's ridiculous. And now that Devin Hester is in the Hall of Fame, the fact that he lapped his numbers It just doesn't make any sense to not include him. And it's not to take away from Hester's candidacy. He was the most dangerous and best returner in the NFL post Brian Mitchell, but it has ignored what has happened over the last few years. And you know what? I do think what will be helpful for B. Mitch too is not just that Hester went in, but the renewed emphasis on the kickoff not being a ceremonial play any longer, where the NFL has said, we're done with everybody just kicking the ball out of the end zone. It was all really done in the name of safety. There were a lot of injuries that were occurring on kickoffs because people were running full steam. They had to change all these rules through the years, like the wedge buster had to be removed. And there was a lot of just head injuries and other injuries that were occurring on kickoffs because of how violent the collisions were running at full speed. But it went so far the other way that we had all these it became a ceremonial play and all these touchbacks, and it kind of took this play out of the game, and kickoff returns, long ones and ones for touchdowns, were just like such a rare occurrence that the NFL, I think, wisely wanted to put it back in the game. Will their rules work? I don't really know. They're going to do this. It's a very different thing. Maybe you've seen some of it already in the first preseason game at the Hall of Fame game, but you basically 10 of the 11 players, the kicker's still kicking off from the same spot, 35-yard line, but everyone else is going to be up on the opponent's 40-yard line, and then somewhere between the 30 and 35, the other team can line up as many as 10 if they want in that area. You can have up to 2 returners in what's called the landing zone. It is not wise to kick a ball into the end zone and get a touchback, because the ball, it's going to be punishable. It's going to move the ball up to a better field position, and you don't want to do that. So it's going to encourage returns, and you can't take a fair catch in the landing zone. You have to bring it back. So we're not getting the full speed collisions, but we're going to see a different style and different coordination to try to figure out who gets good at this. And I've talked about this a lot. Like, I think whichever teams figure this out with the returners or the blocking schemes or the coverage schemes, they're going to have a massive advantage in field of position this coming year. And every day the Commanders, I'm sure everybody are working on this and trying different people back there. But I do think in B. Mitch's case, it's going to be a renewed emphasis on the play, how important it is, what a difference maker it can be. And he was the ultimate difference maker when it came to those types of plays for his team. And so with all this kind of heightened awareness of how special teams are a humongous part of outcomes of games, and Devin Hester going into the Hall of Fame, I'm hoping now that there will be renewed interest, renewed vigor, and renewed openness by the voters to see if Hester's in. I don't know how you can't have Brian Mitchell in. So hopefully that case will be made. As for the others on the list, I'd mentioned them earlier. I'd love to see Larry Brown get in. I think it's going to be hard to make that case because he played so long ago, and no one is claiming like he was the Jim Brown of his time or anything like that. Gary Clark, I think, is just underrated, underknown, and underappreciated nationally, not locally, but nationally. And again, this is now 40 years ago, 35, 40 years ago when he played, but I think he was as integral to the Super Bowl championship teams as Art Monk was through the years. But the other two that are more current, some are more current, Jake isn't, but more relevant and more talked about, Joe Jacoby is, in my opinion, the best offensive lineman this team's ever had. He was, I think some of the Hogs, and a couple of them are in the Hall of Fame, would tell you that he was the best player of all of them. It's a travesty that the best player on one of the most iconic, if not the most iconic offensive line in the history of the game, he's one of the very few who played in all 4 Super Bowls and won 3 of them. You'll hear things that Bruce Smith and Lawrence Taylor said about going up against him. And the fact that he's been ignored and shunned doesn't make any sense. So he's number T, B. Mitch, Fletcher are the 3 on my list that I think are glaring holes in the Hall of Fame. London Fletcher, you put up his resume against anybody's. I'll show you his numbers. You'd think that's Ray Lewis or Dick Butkus, or you would think this was amongst the greatest linebackers of all time, because he was. His stats speak for itself. So we're hoping that Jake and London also get in soon, but B. Mitch's time feels like now, because there has never been a more relevant time to have the conversation about him. All right, be right back. Bram watches the show, ESPN 630, Sports Capital. So I spent a lot of time here talking about the Commanders today. I do want to focus in on the other team that I am very privileged to call their games of, the Washington Spirit, for a moment, because what is happening over in Paris is it's not like it's some kind of surprise here that Trinity Rodman is a massive star, and she kind of already was for the United States women's team anyway. But in recent years, and this has been documented, like the dominance of the U.S. women's national team is not what it used to be, where they were the standard bearer of the sport. It was a shock if it, not like the men's basketball team, which I'll talk about in a minute. It was like a shock if they weren't at bare minimum playing for the gold medal and having a relatively easy time getting there. And if they didn't win that, it was seen as a complete disappointment because the program was just so far ahead of everyone else in the world, and the skill of the players and the coordination of the players seemed to be kind of so far ahead of everybody else in the world. And that's really changed in recent years. So while Trinity Rodman, this isn't new for her to play on the national team, the success rate of the team has waned a little bit. The last Olympics, Canada won. The last World Cup, the United States was not there playing in the final. And there's been some changes at the coaching structure and all that stuff. And so the world is caught up. There's a lot of really good international teams, players. Women's soccer has exploded around the world. There's a Premier League now. There's a La Liga now. The new coach of the Spirit just came from Spain and Barcelona, where he had an incredible run. And so the sport has risen to a point where there's kind of been an equalizing force in the United States isn't what it used to be. And then came this tournament. And a number of members of the Spirit are on it. Casey Kruger made the main squad. So did Trinity Rodman, obviously. And then two rookies, Hal Hirschfeld and Croy Bethune, have been alternates. And Bethune's actually seen some action in the Olympics, but hasn't played a really prominent role. But Rodman has. And she's becoming, it's not like we didn't know this, a massive, massive star, because she's scoring, either leading to these defining moment goals, or in the case of over the weekend, scoring the one that propelled the U.S. back into the semifinals.
Looking for Rodman again. Rodman and Trinity Rodman. Amidst a morass of muddling mediocrity and frustration, a special moment. 22-year-old Trinity Rodman, take a bow.
We've seen her on a few occasions, and that is going to be a tight call. Pull this back to her left side and misses, but for her to have the confidence to continue the cut, the touch, and that, my friends, is a beauty. Upper corner.
Just a literally incredible goal. And when they said it was very close, it was to being offside, but she collects it right on the kind of outside of the box, one touch back to her left, and just an incredible strike with her left foot to give the United States a victory over Japan. That happened in extra time, the first round of extra time, 1-0 they won. So they head into the semifinals. They're going to face Germany, a team that they had already throttled earlier in the tournament. So the United States could be back in line to be playing for the gold medal. And if they were to bring that back, and I'm going to talk to my broadcast partner, Mike Minnick, later this week, kind of the level of stardom that Rodman is about to go into and reach, I think is going to hit a humongous crescendo here really soon, especially if she does anything else like this, where she has these kind of magical moments, because she has really led the way for the team. And it's like here locally, we know how big a deal she is, but now it's happening globally. So let's see how this thing plays out. And congratulations to her. The goal is absolutely amazing. As for the men's basketball team, go of it. Beat up on Puerto Rico over the weekend to finish group play by winning all their games. They're heading into a game later this week where they're going to play Brazil, who's kind of perceived as a Cinderella of the tournament and doesn't while they're a very, as Steve Kerr put it, really physical team, it's hard to picture them as a team that's going to give the United States a lot of trouble. Off of all the exhibitions, I didn't love what I saw. I mean, the names speak for themselves, and the ability that the team has speaks for itself. And in my opinion, nobody should even really be close to them. And Steve Kerr is, saying all the right things with they're really physical and they're really good and all that stuff. But the United States should really have an easy road into the bare minimum, the semifinals, and then we'll see who they play. And then at that point, I just have a really, really, really hard time seeing them not win with this team, which is as close to a dream team as we've had since the original incarnations with the players that are on it. Just so many first ballot Hall of Famers out there between Steph Curry and LeBron James and Kevin Durant and I think Joel Embiid and the way Ant Edwards is going and Jason Tatum. Like, how this team loses feels crazy to me. The big day came from Ant Edwards, 11-15, 26 points in the win over Puerto Rico as they cruised to a win by 21 points. All right, everybody, that'll do it. Back at it tomorrow. See you then. Bram Watch the Show, ESPN 630, The Sports Capital.